2030.
Saudi Arabia, the point of investment fund,
it's a
there's
big
a lot of
vision.
excitement
This
around
transformational
specifically.
change. Every aspect of the kingdom, economic, social, cultural, religious.
The 2030.
This is the 2030.
Yalla, 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 yalla.
This is the 2030 episode 34. Dr. Hanaa Almoaibed, hello. From Saudi Arabia, how are you doing?
I am doing well, thank you. How are you?
I am also doing well. We're still on baby watch here. We're at an any day status, which, as you know, elevates.
Any second, I'm sure.
Any second, really. It's any second, as you know, that elevates blood pressure and heartbeats a little bit around here, but we're doing well. A couple extra wrinkles, I'm sure. How was your flight to the kingdom?
Yeah, not bad. So because I come to the Eastern Province, I usually fly into Bahrain and then drive across the causeway because otherwise it's a couple of transfers and there's a direct flight from London into Bahrain. It's easier. It was fine. It was good. It was, you know what? Actually, it was longer than normal. There was a little bit of a detour in the sky.
Yep. Just did that
there were
detour.
Some events.
Yeah.
Well, yesterday was also quite an eventful evening, wasn't it? So, you know, it's a tricky, tumultuous time all around Saudi, but it's like stable as a rock when you get here. So that feels good.
Yeah, I did the detour on the way out of Saudi a few weeks ago. I've never really flown directly west and then up before. Usually it's above Jordan. The airspace was closed. I'm glad that you're safe and sound and that they didn't take the normal route to get there. But I'm glad you have arrived safe and sound in the Eastern Province. And you're going to Riyadh later this week, right?
Tomorrow, inshallah, yes.
Tomorrow, inshallah, yes. Well, we will get to it here. Before we start, we just want to talk for a second about the news segment. We're going to make a few changes to the show on our news segment. So much of our audience, as some know, they're growing very quickly with over 18,000 subscribers now and counting. That was the last count. I actually haven't counted in the last few days. Many of you guys are watching this on YouTube. Actually, if you're watching this segment may not be on YouTube, but you're hearing this. Some of our segments on social media that are in video format are doing very well, and people are finding them very useful from kind of all corners of the globe. And that makes sense, right? Because we have topics that we discuss. People may not be interested in a podcast all about Saudi Arabia, but they may have something they're interested in about Saudi Arabia. So we're starting to touch people in those spaces. And we've made a decision to make some of these changes to our news segment, which for audio listeners should make it a little bit more kind of interesting and engaging. For viewers, our news segment is actually 4 different videos, and testing of some of the feedback that we have gotten here from various sources indicates that the most popular content we make is the analysis, reaction commentary to news information that we share with each other, very much in line with how podcasts should be, right? So the format was for us to sort of read news stories and then talk about them. But now what we're going to do is make a little bit of a change and make it a little bit more interesting and fun. Definitely for us, Hanaa, as host, but also for listeners and viewers, we think we're going to make the format sort of both a blend of what we were doing of news and then also conversation throughout. And it just basically is a change in how we're presenting the information, podcast style. We also want to make that segment a little bit less formal. So this does feel right. Anyone can read the news anywhere. And we think that this new format, which will still include, by the way, 4 stories per episode, it gives us a little bit more space to talk about it. And then for the videos of each news segment, which will now start to emerge a little bit more on social media channels now that we're 34 episodes in. We're starting to really get the feet and the pilings planted deeply into the seafloor. You'll see more of those on our social channels as those communities are growing. So just wanted to give a little bit of a note on that before we began episode 34. Thank you to everybody, all 17,000 of you and others who are seeing this or listening to us. We do really appreciate it. It's really cool. And we are adaptable, Dr. Hanaa, so we want to make this the best possible show that we can make it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, as you said, news can be accessed anywhere. Maybe some of it is a little bit less obvious. Maybe we're uncovering certain news stories that people wouldn't necessarily see. But in general, I do think that what we have to offer is an ability to contextualize the news a little bit and give it a little bit of a backstory and maybe even pick it apart in light of experiences we've had, people we know, and firsthand knowledge. So really happy to kind of pivot in this direction and try out a new format. So thank you.
Yeah, and we should note on the content itself. I mean, we have both wanted to do stories about things that maybe aren't getting the same level of attention, especially in the West, and then also have discussed stories that are getting a lot of attention, but we have something extra to add to it. We will stick with that. We'll stick with stories that we feel like nobody's talking about, but should be talked about. But we also will talk about some of the big stories that are talked about widely so that we can add some input into that as well. But yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Hanaa. You can get your news pretty much anywhere. We want to add more to it, and we feel like this is a good move. So thank you. And if you haven't done so yet, of course, have to say it, please subscribe to us wherever you're hearing or seeing this. We appreciate it. Dr. Hanaa, let's get to the deep dive.
Let's get to a deep dive.
Deep dive today, Dr. Hanaa. Time flies. We are approaching FII 2024, number 8, the 8th FII. You're going to Riyadh. Are you going to FII? I know Aziz is.
I am not going to FII. I have never been to FII. It's not really my scene or my space. I'm doing other things in Riyadh. I'm going to go to another event, and I can tell you more about it later. But yes, Abdulaziz and Naim, my husband, will be there and will be speaking.
Excellent. Yeah. So it's in its 8th edition, as I mentioned, 29th through 31st of October, under the theme of, quote, Infinite Horizons, Investing Today, Shaping Tomorrow. I'm surprised that you haven't been to one yet. I do want to talk with you about that because it is kind of like an ideas festival. It's really hard to describe. Anyway, so FII, the biggest and most widely known and most high profile annual conference in Saudi Arabia, which is saying something these days because there seems to be one of those every week in the kingdom. You could call it like a giga conference. It's so big and the attendance numbers keep going up each year. I think they started to kind of flatten out a little bit once they started charging for admission. I believe that was 2 years ago. It takes place at the Ritz-Carlton and at the KAICC, King Abdullah International Conference Center, where we met for the first time, Dr. Hanaa. If you haven't been to one before, I'm talking to both you, Dr. Hanaa, and our listeners and viewers. It's worth it. I think they're really well done in terms of interesting conversations. Some of the biggest names in finance. I mean, this year's roster of attendees is really impressive, including, I want to mention, Josh Harris, the new owner of the Washington now Commanders. With that said, if you haven't been now, I think it's about $15,000 to attend. You have to buy a subscription or I guess a sort of annual membership to the FII, which is about $15,000 a year. And so, if you're speaking, obviously they're not charging you, but it's cool. It's like a global idea forum. As I said, it's sort of, there's just like a lot to see and do, but the conversations are really good. It's executed by Richard Attias and the FII Institute. They do it every year. They do an incredible job. Part of what makes it incredible as well is the venue itself, which is the Ritz and the King Abdullah International Conference Center, which is one of the more ornate buildings that you may see in your lifetime. And I think it is one of those things you do need to see for yourself. It's impossible really to describe all the cool stuff you'll see, cool cars, cool technologies. It's like a mini World's Fair. It's been called Davos in the Desert before. I don't know if they really embrace that name, but it's kind of descriptive. It's a great networking opportunity. I will miss this year, as we mentioned earlier, for my wife to give birth here in the USA any day, any second. On the networking, there are other events around FII that are just awesome. And I can speak more just in the VC space. There are 4 invite-only events I can tell you about that are definitely good. Endeavor Capitalist is having an event on the 28th. Code on the 28th as well. And then SVC, Saudi Venture Capital, on the 29th. Then you'll have 500 Global on the 30th. So each sector really has these like sort of offshoot events that are really good, really excellent networking. I want to mention though, and I really do, I get asked about this a lot. I know you do as well. I tell clients for my advisory company this is not a chance really for fund managers to come and raise money in a weekend and then leave. That is the biggest sort of misconception about this, that because it is a huge conference in Saudi Arabia, there'll be many money managers there, that it's also fundraising opportunity. I haven't really seen that work ever. And because I've been saying this, it was really exciting. And I shared this with you on WhatsApp, Hanaa. This was actually written in a Reuters article about the FII this week. So it was super cool to see it like actually publicly shared. One advisory executive told Reuters, quote, many managers are reconsidering FII. Saudi Arabia has clearly told them, we know you want our money, but how are you participating in our future? Most managers don't have an answer to that. So, it's not just that. Saudis are savvy investors. Everyone should know this by now. It's not an ATM. There are great opportunities for investment locally in the kingdom as the kingdom diversifies. We have this transformation going on. It's also the macroeconomic climate, right? I mean, the urgency for foreign investment into Saudi Arabia. Another quote from Reuters, the same piece, said as much, quote, amid lower oil prices and production that have dampened the government's earnings, the kingdom has begun a spending review under which some projects will be delayed or scaled back, others prioritized, something we've talked about very recently. That has put pressure on international funds that have traditionally looked to Saudi Arabia for money to invest elsewhere, for them to commit billions of dollars into the domestic transformation. Like, yes, it's just really good to see a top end news agency actually spell that out. Maybe I won't be getting that question anymore. Who knows? So more about FII 8 this coming week and what to expect. On the 28th, you have pre-event summits. I think they call it day 0, which is really interesting, but it's like before the event, you'll have these sort of pre-event events. And then on the 29th and 30th will be the speaking events. It's more like a conference. This year, again, they have a really sad to miss this, but they have a really truly loaded list of speakers that are going. Just go to their website. You'll see it's really a who's who in international finance, but there are also political leaders there and other leaders from the education space. It really isn't just about finance. Obviously, it is focused on that with the term investment in the title. The thing that I am most disappointed to miss this year, Hanaa, is there is a Pro-Am golf tournament associated with the event, which I bet is super fun. Nothing is better for networking than golf. So sad to miss that. But yeah, I mean, last thing I will say about it is another question I get a lot actually is every time there's an article about FII in Bloomberg, Reuters, the AP, or a major US newspaper, they're always putting it in the context of regional events. There's always a cloud over FII because of X, Y, and Z. This year is the same as last year. The event last year took place just after the Hamas attack in Israel. 1 year later, things are a lot worse. And that was sort of the context into which FII was being put in. But you said it yourself, Hanaa, in sort of the intro. This is a place, Saudi Arabia is a place, and, hopefully continues this way of stability in a region of turmoil. And that has been consistent with all 8 FIIs. I mean, every single FII has this preamble or word of caution. But when you get there and you're on the ground, there's no feeling of that. I mean, this year may be different. And last year almost certainly was a little bit different because you sort of had all this uncertainty going on. But once you're there, it will be awesome. So we look forward to hearing from our listeners and viewers who is going, what they're doing. We'd love to hear from you. Send some pics because neither of us will be in attendance. You'll be in Riyadh, Hanaa. But yeah, just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about it. It's certainly the biggest deal for Saudi Arabia when it comes to exposure in the US in this space, in finance and investment, venture capital, all of that. It's their biggest conference by far. So I know a lot of actually Westerners that have gone. Their one time going to Saudi Arabia was to FII and then they left. I'm always interested in that too, because I'm like, this is not really the real Saudi Arabia either. Like, I'm super curious in how you experienced it, because it's like, that's not the real thing, but it is cool. And congrats to the organizers, FII and Richard Attias. They do such an awesome job with everything they do, but congrats to them in advance of this conference.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been. So some of what you're describing and like saying you have to go to really know what it's like, I don't really know what it's like. I've heard people talk about it. Aziz has been almost every year, except for a couple of the COVID years when it was difficult for us to travel. However, and we were in the UK. However, I will say, it's definitely a place to go if you want to catch up with people that are in the same space as you are. So not necessarily an opportunity to come and network and look for investment opportunities only, but it is a really good place where if you have met somebody and you want to reconnect or talk to them a little bit more, they're likely going to be in Riyadh at the same time as you are coming to FII if you're in kind of the investment space. Again, it's not really my area at all. Even if it's something to see and something to do, it's just not my thing at all. So actually, right before it starts on the 27th and 28th of October, there's going to be the Global CSR Forum, which I'm going to be at and I'm going to be speaking at. So that's definitely more my vibe. I look at how kind of, investment bankers, people in finance make money and how we can then take that and do something with it to make sure to make sure that people who aren't benefiting from the profits directly can also indirectly benefit from it. So I'm going to be representing Rawabi Holding at the Global CSR Forum on stage talking about our CSR programs that target youth empowerment. So a little bit different, but also a global conference, also with the who's who of, corporate social responsibility. And both of these topics can be controversial. A lot of people call CSR a complete, fake effort to kind of just greenwash what your company is doing. Personally, my experience with CSR has always been really genuine. I've seen direct impact, and I think that's wonderful. And I think the same for investing. If you do it well, you can create a lot of value and impact in a very positive way for a lot of people. So I think that I also hear, especially when people do refer to FII as Davos in the desert, I hear a lot of negativity from people a lot of times when they're talking to about these events. And I just think everything can be seen from so many different angles and we can see the good. And I've seen so much good come out of all of these different events. So just a shout out to my husband, Aziz Naim, who is the managing director of Mayar Capital. He's going to be speaking in Lab 2, which is there's some labs alongside
I was looking at
plenary,
that. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that is navigating growth strategies for emerging asset managers in Saudi capital market. And I believe that's on the last day. Which day is that? Hang on. Day 3. So
okay.
With a couple other people from PIF and different areas, I've navigated away from the page because I was looking for which day it was. So, but just shout out to him. So he'll be speaking on his expertise while I speak about the CSR one.
Shout out to Aziz, very brilliant financial mind, obviously runs a hedge fund. Everybody that has not listened to his episode on the 2030 fairly early on was excellent. And we urge everybody to go do that. It's on our YouTube page. I don't have the episode number in front of us for the audio version, but he was great. I know he's going to kill it at this conference. Do you know if the CSR event was planned around the timing of FII or if it was just oops, same weekend?
I mean, I think it's the same organizers. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I still would like to know why they have a monopoly over organizing these huge events. You say that they do a great job. I'm sure other people could do a great job too. Not to say that I don't like them. I'm just saying they seem to organize all the big events in Riyadh, but this one's going to be at the Four Seasons. It could possibly be targeting similar audience. There was a more local national event on the not-for-profit sector last week, and this is following on from that. So I do think there were a lot of agreements that were signed between different entities, public-private partnerships, and so on at the kind of national nonprofit event. And then this is kind of the global one where then you're kind of opening up the conversation to a wider audience that are talking about kind of best practices in corporate social responsibility and kind of looking at all the different angles and how it's done in different sectors and so on. So quite possibly, yes, but I don't know.
Yeah. And if you are planning on going to FII or the CSR event that you are going to, and you have not booked your hotel room yet, please be prepared to mortgage a portion of your house or all of your holdings because it will not be inexpensive at this point. But it will be a city that, for every FII I've been to, there's an extra elevated buzz going on. There's so much happening. So for those of you going, please enjoy it and send us anything you want, really. Photos, comments, anything. We'd love to hear about it. Dr. Hanaa, let's get to the news.
Let's get to the news.
The 2030.
So it's official. Sindalah Island at Neom has opened its doors.
Let's go.
Sindalah Island is the first Neom project to open doors, and a handpicked selection of guests have gotten the first glimpse of it, which is really exciting. So Sindalah Island is a development within the Neom Giga project that is off the coast of Saudi Arabia and the Red Sea. It's one of eventually a dozen or dozens of actually luxurious high-end destinations planned for the area in the northwest part of Saudi Arabia. Sindalah has ultra-luxury hotels, plenty of access for yachts. The yachts that I have seen on my social media that were already there are insane. Right? Yeah, it's crazy. I'm like, who are these people? A golf course, pristine beaches, and a lot more. Marriott has several hotels there already. And, there's been a lot of celebrities there for the opening. So there is a person that works for Neom that I see regularly in the UK. It's a British person. And he was really skeptical. He's like, I don't really know who's going to come to this opening. And I'm like, well, you know what? A week later, I'm now looking at my social media and plenty of people have gone to the opening. The chairman of Robbie was there with his sons for the opening. Hamid Turki, producer in Hollywood, was there. So very cool. It was his feed really that I was looking at because I don't really scroll social media for too long, but there are people I know that just come up. So there was some footage of them with Will Smith, which was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Will Smith was just there as well for that film thing. I don't know what.
Yeah, what was it called? I don't think so. You can go back and forth quite easily, can't you?
I guess, yeah.
So it's so cool. And I just this is the thing. Whenever I say Neom, people think of the line. And I'm like, no, guys, it's like a region. It's a really big part of the Northwest. And there's so much that's going to be there. It's not just one place. And so I think people really have this misconception. But I think the line made a lot of headlines. But Neom is big. It's a whole area. And so much is planned for it. And this island that is off the coast is now the first to have its grand opening, which is very exciting. It's
so exciting. And it's interesting because I get the same thing about Neom. It's like, oh yeah, that 109 kilometer building that's in the shape of a line that just seems impossible to build. But it's interesting because it's like the resorts like Sindalah and some of these other ones, Trojena, I always mess that up, is in the mountains where they'll host the 2029 Asian Winter Games ski resort in Saudi Arabia. Those seem kind of, those don't get as many headlines at all as the line. The line is just like, what? Really? Whereas these things are also cool. You glanced over it in a New York second, but the golf course that they're building, I don't know if it's done yet, looks absolutely sick. Definitely next year golf bucket list for me. I'm going to try to make that happen if they finish it. And I saw the same stuff online, Dr. Hanaa. There was one from this LinkedIn influencer that I'm friends with who is there. And he's been showing sort of pictures from it nonstop. The pictures look awesome. It looks finished. It looks cool. It looks like a really awesome resort. Of course, you have these insane Red Sea, beaches all around it. Obviously, it's an island. So they're trying to compete maybe with the Maldives, and they're trying to keep Saudis, as we have talked about many times, tourism. They want to keep them local. Of course, it's amazing because maybe you got the invite. I didn't get the invite. It must have gotten lost in the mail. Sometimes that happens from Saudi to the US. But anyway, this influencer shared this, I guess it's I don't know what you would use in Saudi, but there's apps where you can see all the boats around you and how deep the water is. And it was just 80 yachts all around Sindalah Island, all named. It looked insane. And then we talked a little bit about this, Hanaa, in the deep dive, but there's been a little bit of a pivot. Saudis really want, American finance dudes, Western finance dudes, Chinese finance dudes to come in, not just looking for capital partnerships for Saudi money to invest at home, but also to show investment opportunities local in Saudi Arabia. And this is part of this big rollout party that they had. We didn't get invited to, of an exclusive bash is what Bloomberg called it. But this is part of that, they're kind of showing that NEOM has traction, even if it's just one of their many, many developments that they're doing there. It's like, hey, look, like we're doing this. If you want to go see the project that we're making on Oxagam or the line, we're just a stone's throw away, but like we're getting things done here. This is not just a dream. This is starting to become reality. And these are good investment opportunities. They would tell these guys. So yeah, I mean, good timing too ahead of FII. So yeah, I think this is interesting.
Just a last point on that. I was in NEOM about, how long has it been now? Like 5 years ago. They hadn't really built a whole lot. There was already the airport. There were a couple of already kind of existing hotels, but you could just see like this is part of the Red Sea that is just as beautiful as what a lot of people are familiar with across the Red Sea in Egypt, but pristine and untouched. So, and one of their biggest kind of, I think, goals is to keep it as pristine as possible. That's the appeal, right? That's why people will come, is because it's part of the Red Sea that has just been kind of hidden for such a long time. And the corals there, the coastline, the color of the water and the sand, it's just absolutely amazing. So yeah, maybe they're trying to compete with the Maldives, but I think they have their own thing going for them. And so it's actually really exciting.
That's so exciting. Can't wait to check it out. Dr. Hanaa, we're going to talk a little bit about Saudi football this week. I've already mentioned golf, so that box has been checked. And this news on Saudi Arabia football this week, it's kind of bittersweet, you might say. Are you familiar with like what's going on with the coaches with their national team?
I am. I read this news earlier, but
Okay.
you could go ahead and tell us a little bit more about it.
So Roberto Mancini was the head coach of the Saudi national team for 14 pretty unsuccessful months as coach. And so just big picture here, Saudi Arabia's national team is definitely on the rise globally. Everybody remembers its defeat of Argentina at the World Cup. That was kind of a big milestone in the rise of Saudi football in terms of a national football team, not in terms of the pro league, obviously two different things. The team still relies on international coaches, and it's, of course, Saudi Arabia, and it's football crazed. These coaches are some of the best in the world. Before Roberto Mancini, it was Herve Renard for 4 years, one of the best heads of hair you will ever see on any human being ever. Saudi Arabia is not the only one, I should mention, that uses international coaches, of course. I mean, just to be clear, the United States just hired a new foreign coach, Mauricio Roberto Trocero Pochettino. I definitely said all four of those names wrong. He is an Argentinian who took over the job. The Americans suck at soccer. There's no other way to say it. Anyway, back to Saudi. Mancini was hired 14 months ago. Results have also been disappointing. He's 59. He came to Saudi last August, the 2023, 2 weeks after he resigned as Italy's manager. So it's kind of a big get for Saudi at the time. And he led Saudi Arabia to a very disappointing 7 wins in 18 matches during that 14 months. And they are now sitting just outside the automatic qualification spots for the 2026 World Cup, which would be quite devastating for Saudi Arabia after they lost 2-0 to Japan at home. And they also went with a goalless draw with Bahrain earlier this month, where you just flew into. And so they parted ways mutually. And I think Mancini was like, man, I'm not doing a good job. And Saudi was like, yeah, you're really not. We need more than this. The rumored next head coach for Saudi Arabia's national team is none other than the greatest hair of all time, Herve Renard. We will see what happens, but that would be quite a story with Herve leaving for 14 months and coming right back and being like, I'm sorry, I just, I want to do this right again. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, is it Herve? I think it might be, but I don't know.
There's no accent aigu on the E is what I saw. So maybe I could be wrong. Lucien
I just know
is
Herve,
wrong.
and
Yeah.
I know an Herve, and that's why I'm assuming. But like, I don't really know.
Let's
I'll
look
ask
at
my
it.
son later.
Yeah,
Because he's better. He speaks French.
No, it is
Actually, when I
Herve.
went to-
So there's an accent aigu at the top.
Was
Okay, on
there?
the E. Got it. So it's
Okay.
Herve. Excusez-moi, everybody.
Herve. So, like Herve, honestly, I just remember that speech that he gave in the locker room to the Saudi team that was like circulated all over social media. Basically, he was shouting at them after the first half of the Argentina game in the World Cup in Qatar and in Doha, like just telling them how they weren't performing well, whatever. And then like they went to win the game, which was pretty cool. But then also, I guess that didn't really work in the other games. I didn't do so well in, but it was such a cool, like that win and him being the coach, you know, I think everybody has a little bit of a soft spot for him. So how cool would it be if he came back and like, was like, see, told you I was the best person for you. There was also this thing about his relationship with his mom. And I don't remember, like, I think he was like, I think she was there for the Argentina game. And I think there were photos of her celebrating the win with her son. Like I have a vague memory of this as well. So I think he's kind of a nice guy. I don't know anything about him.
Well, it's funny you say that he's kind of a nice guy because as you were talking, I just like, I know exactly what he looks like. I mean, classic, like handsome French, kind of looks like a French finance guy. And I was like, you know, I don't know. Every time I see a picture of him, he always looks so serious. Like, you know, you're like worried that you're like, as your dad would just be like so serious and never smile. I just Googled him because I wanted to find out about the E that I obviously messed up. And there are very few pictures of him smiling. There are a ton of pictures of him very seriously scowling, obviously at a soccer field or arguing with a ref. So yeah, I mean, it seems like he would be a good fit. I don't know why he left actually. So if anybody's listening or watching this, like let us know, but he may be back, but Roberto Mancini is definitely gone.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I remember stuff about when he left, but I don't think it was anything particular other than it's time for a change. He'd been there for quite some time, right? Like 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
Said that, but yeah. And so like it was time for a change, but you know, let's see. It could be good for them to have him come back. That feels weird though, leaving and then coming, but I don't know. Like football's weird and I don't really understand it beyond, you know, a few things in the English Premier League just because of my kids, but yeah. Anyway, but brace yourself because we're going to talk about Saudi and China.
Okay, I'm going to mute
Saudi Arabia,
my earphones. You go right ahead. Talk about Saudi Arabia and China all you want.
Well, Saudi Arabia is setting its sights on the Chinese outbound tourism market as part of its strategy to transform the kingdom into a global tourism hub. And you know, this is according to Skift. I think there was an interview with the minister Al-Khatib talking, or if it wasn't an interview, it was at least a report talking specifically about this. And there's also, I think Saudi Arabia has a pavilion in China at the moment where they're trying to market, you know, the different Saudi tourism destinations. It's a pretty exciting thing. I mean, you know that the Chinese really like to travel and see the world, and why not come to Saudi Arabia, which is supposed to be one of the most exciting new untapped tourist destinations in the world. Regular listeners and viewers know this well. Saudi Arabia wants to be a world-class tourism destination. We've talked about it so many times. And in the interview with Al-Khatib, actually it was an interview, he spoke about how China is a huge market, discussed outbound traveling Chinese citizens can contribute to the goals of Saudi boosting its tourism market. And apparently last year, 120 million Chinese traveled. This year, that number is expected to reach 140 million. And next year, they're focusing on a record 150 million. So Saudi's identified an opportunity to attract 20 to 25% of Chinese tourists who take mid to long haul flights. And Khatib said, we want to capture part of this big traffic. To tap into this market, Saudi has been actively promoting itself, as I mentioned, in China.
Yeah. We're going to need to do a deep dive from you, Dr. Hanaa. His Excellency Al-Khatib did a good interview, a really long interview that seemed to be widely popular in Saudi Arabia. It was in Arabic with another podcast. So that would be a good kind of deep dive to, you know, listen to it and kind of distill it for our, you know, English listeners here. I thought this was really interesting because he sort of like, it's not just like his comments on China and wanting to capture some of those outbound markets, which all jokes aside makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, a lot of Chinese are flying, you know, around the world for tourism, and everybody knows, I think, that listens to this podcast, that Saudi Arabia really wants to compete with other destinations in the Gulf to be sort of the transit point for these traveling Chinese, and then also to, have them stay and check it out. And I can just tell you as an American, like, visiting Saudi Arabia, highly recommend it. And I recommend it to everybody, even people that would seem like they may not, want to choose Saudi Arabia as their first destination overseas, but it is worth it. What I thought was interesting about Khatib's, His Excellency Khatib's comments here is he sort of talks about a little bit of the future of Saudi travel and what he envisions for visiting Saudi Arabia and for visitors. He said that the ministry is exploring how technology can enhance the experience, especially in airports, which I feel like is a very disruptible space when it comes to having convenience and a enjoyable experience. He said, quote, "We want to digitalize the unnecessary, like the hassle of airports, while preserving the necessary human connections that are core to tourism. That includes concepts like biometric systems and unmanned transport, while allowing tourists to take in local culture and people." And then this is the quote that I thought was like super interesting. He says, "I don't want to spend time in the airport. This is unnecessary." Like, right on. "Picking up my bag, it's unnecessary. Just put in a chip, let the bag be delivered to your hotel." I'm like, yeah, of course. But of course, I mean, I feel like Saudi Arabia can be disruptive in the tourism market if they embrace technology in this way. And that would make a difference for people visiting. I mean, word would get out. Did you know that when you fly to Saudi Arabia, your bag will be waiting for you at your hotel? Like, things like that. And I think he's a bit of a visionary when it comes to this stuff. It was kind of cool to have him spell that out to Skift when he was in San Francisco very recently.
So the worst part of traveling is waiting for your bag. He's so spot on with this. And sometimes you go through immigrations really quickly and then you end up spending forever just waiting for your bags. Like, this is something that happens at Heathrow all the time. And I just stand there and it's like, there's 2 other flights ahead of me and I can see that it's just their bags coming out and my bags haven't even started being loaded onto this stupid conveyor belt or whatever it's called. And it's just like the worst. So yeah, why not? Honestly, like, we should definitely embrace tech in those ways. We talk about how we can really embrace it for the betterment of everybody's life experiences. Like, this is such a no-brainer. I love that.
That's the worst part of traveling to you. I mean, I think I'd probably, at this point, I would put, first of all, I don't really check bags that much. Like, even when I'm going to Saudi for like 2 weeks, I'm like, anything above the carry on, like, big duffel and then the like rolling thing, that's all I need. I don't know. I mean, I'm a man, so I don't have like a lot of extra accessories really to bring, but I would say it's, for me, and we've talked about this way too much, but it's the internet, like, on a long flight. And it's like, it feels like it's like being operated by 2 mice that are spinning a small wheel around and nothing loads. And it's just a huge waste of time to me. We've already debated this, but I feel like that's the worst thing. There's a lot of bad things. Like honestly, it's a long list.
There's a lot you can get done on an airplane if you prepare, and internet is a distraction sometimes to, kind of deep work. And so I feel like the plane is a great place for deep work. And when my internet's not working, I kind of just like turn off the phone and I'm like, it's not working. It's slow. It's not loading. I've already downloaded like a few things that I need to work on. I'm going to do my deep work and it's okay. You can be so productive on a plane. So it's not the worst thing for me. Waiting for bags is pretty bad. And I've gotten really good at doing carry-ons, but hey, so have you ever taken the wrong bag off of the
No, but I'm so terrified of somebody taking my bag. Like, that's my biggest fear about traveling, except for death, is that somebody's just gonna come along and just like yank my suits that I need that night, and I'm like, okay, hey everybody, I'm showing up in sweatpants to this meeting. Yeah.
So it's happened.
So
I've taken the wrong bag.
You've taken the wrong bag. So you're okay. Go on.
Well, obviously, then I didn't have my bag either. So it was a really long time ago, and it's become a bit of it's become a sore kind of topic in an airport. Like, when we're in a hurry and like one of my family members is double checking the tags over and over and over again. And I'm like, we've already read it. It's definitely ours. But it's because of this one time.
What was in the bag? Whose bag did you get?
It doesn't even matter. I didn't open it. Like, it was in Dubai. It was many years ago. And we get back to the hotel room and I like grab the bag and I put it on the like little like fold out thing where you can put your suitcase. It was a small bag. And I look at it and I'm like, oh, this is not my bag.
Oh my God, nightmare. When did you make this discovery? Was it like in the cab or was it in your room?
It was in the room. When I looked at it, I was just about to like reach for the zipper to open it. And I didn't even get that far. Like the second I looked at it, I realized it wasn't my bag.
Well, big mistake because if it's Dubai, it could have been a suitcase full of cash and you would have been really happy
I know.
with it.
Well, no,
Kidding,
I didn't
everybody.
want anything to do with somebody else's bag. So we go back to the airport and it was impossible to get back to the airport to talk to somebody about a bag once you're already out of it. Like it was really, 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 really hard to get back in, to find somebody to talk to, and our bag was there. And we're like, okay, well, like you guys need to call these people because this is not ours. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry to whoever's out there in the world. If your bag was taken once about 16, 17 years ago in Dubai and you never saw it again.
And they were just
I did take it back to the airport.
They were so happy to get their cash back. Yeah.
I don't know if they ever got it back, right? Like, I think like if you leave a bag for long enough, it just goes into a room and then eventually they incinerate them. I've heard this. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Just
you know what?
check your tags.
Check your tags. Yeah, I've
Moral
always
of
wanted
the
to put like
story.
a big yellow X on my like thing, I guess to like make it faster. A lot of times I check my bag so I don't have to like lug it around the actual airport, but it could go on the plane. I'm just like, And when I arrived to Saudi, it's like they do it really quick in Riyadh, at least. I mean,
They're good in Riyadh.
in DC,
yeah.
it's a completely different story. I've got the global entry, which is now an app, and I'm just like walking through the line, and there's a line of like 400 people trying to get in. I'm just like, hey, everybody.
Which is why you definitely want your suitcase in your hand and you don't want to have to wait for
so
it.
going back,
right?
I always try to keep it with me. Anyway, interesting story. I'm already a huge fan of this new news format. This is way more fun for us, at least. And now we're getting some
Only
really
because
good.
I have a story about
Yeah.
taking somebody else's bag. It was so bad. So my mom puts little bows. She puts ribbons on the bags, different ribbons, different times. It really helps identify your bag. One of my bags has like a sticker on it from a different airport, and I remember that one. So I'm always like, it's definitely ours. Like I have our name on it and all of that and all the tags. And now I put Apple tags inside my bags as well. So if they don't show up, I know where they are. Or if I'm worried they're not coming out, I can see that they're already in the airport, whatever. So it really helps. But anyway, I love the idea of having it go straight to the hotel so you don't have to worry about taking somebody else's bag.
Have you ever
Or
done
someone else taking yours.
on just like on, because I feel bad we've gone like long on this. This is super interesting. Have you ever done Saudi Arabia's like VIP concierge service, Al Tenfithi?
At Tenfithi, once I've done it. It's not really my thing, but yeah, I've done it once.
Yeah, it's not my thing either.
It's not really.
But it's,
Really?
I thought that was like quite awesome. It's like you arrive in Riyadh. I think it was for a conference. Actually, it might have been for the same conference at which, no, that wouldn't make sense because I was already there. Anyway, but you like arrive, it's like a VIP thing. And then like, you don't ever like see your bags. They're just like in the car. When you get into the car, they take you to the to your hotel. It's nice. You know, if you have the means, yes, I recommend it. It's actually not that much money.
I've done it. I've actually been invited to it before. Like I haven't actually, paid for it. It's just like sometimes I've been traveling with somebody that has it or whatever.
And you're like best friend ever. Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I'm kind of a simple person.
Oh yeah, you are. Okay, we're gonna have to.
I don't really travel I'd rather travel by car inside Saudi, but I do often fly to Riyadh. So
yeah, give me the PJ whenever that's available to me, which is never. So maybe we just disagree on that totally. Anyway, we're gonna move on here. I'm gonna do it. By the way, Dr. Hanaa, I'm keeping the streak of talking about big buildings, tall buildings in Saudi Arabia alive. Ground has officially broken in Saudi Arabia for what is expected to be the world's largest building, the new Mukaab, which is part of the new Murabba project. I think everybody's heard of it at this point. If you don't know about this, most do. It's one of Saudi Arabia's giga projects, the new Murabba project. It's in the north of the city. And, it's got a ton of features, including they really want it to be sustainable. It's going to be mixed use, office, retail. But in the center of it is this huge development called the New Muka'ab, which means cube in Arabic. It's a gigantic cube building. It looks really cool. As we discussed in previous episodes, I think like last episode, I love these like statement buildings because they're like something to see and like kind of elevates a city to a bucket list status, I think, for many. This was announced a few years ago now, but Saudi Arabia has not really wasted any time getting to work. And the area where the development is happening is now fenced off, but you can kind of view it from the roads as you're driving by it. Again, it's like kind of in the north of Riyadh. But it's obviously it's absolutely massive. Last year, authorities with the New Murabba Development Company, I think it's called, announced the signing of an agreement with Bechtel Corporation to provide project management services for the master plan and the site-wide infrastructure. And now we have the news this week that they have broken ground on the New Muka'ab. It's a $50 billion development, and it will be the largest building in the world. And by that, we don't mean tallest, although it will be tall, 1,300 feet high, 130 stories, and then it's 1,200 feet wide, which is so big that you can fit 20 Empire State Buildings inside the building. And that's kind of hard to even say because it's just so big. But yeah, they've broken ground on this project. Things are moving forward. Earlier this year, they announced a new stadium that will be part of the World Cup portfolio of offerings. And we talked a little bit about that stadium in I think a deep dive segment about all the developments on football stadiums going on in Riyadh. But I thought this was kind of interesting. They broke ground. So it's happening. I know it's full steam ahead. I visited the work site about 3 or 4 months ago. Actually, a little bit more than that because it wasn't so hot that I melted in my suit, but it's very cool. Check it out. For you watching, anybody watching, you'll see the kind of pictures of it. It's so ambitious and cool. It will definitely be visible as you fly into Riyadh. You won't be able to miss this thing, but it's really cool and excited to see it start to grow higher and wider as time goes on.
So Al-Murabba is an existing neighborhood called Al-Murabba, right? Which means square in Riyadh. And then this is the New Murabba neighborhood. You're kind of like taking it and transforming it. And then you're building this new building in Muka'ab, which is the cube in Al-Murabba. And that took me a while to like wrap my head around. I'm like, what's going on? And I also don't know Riyadh that well. So like, the cube inside the square, but it looks phenomenal. Again, it's one of the Giga projects. And actually, Lucien, fun fact for you, the Muka'ab is going to unseat the current largest building in the world, not tallest again, which we've talked about a lot, but the largest one, which is not far from my US hometown. It is in Everett, Washington. It's the Boeing factory. So a little bit north of Seattle, and a place that I have been to many times driving north to go to kind of Canada or
Whistler,
beautiful islands up there.
Yeah.
Or even San Juan Islands to take a ferry to go to kind of the beautiful islands that are off the coast. In the Puget Sound. But anyway, that is still the world's largest building by volume at 472 million cubic feet, which is 13.4 million cubic meters. I can't even wrap my head around that. The Empire State Building that helps. It always is helpful to think about something that you actually can see and then think about more than one of them. I remember doing that with like grains of rice when you're thinking about population and stuff like that for students. But yeah, it's still hard to wrap your head around it. Football stadiums is another one people use. Yeah,
it's interesting. And the inside of this thing, like I think what caused a lot of people to be like, whoa, okay. Like the inside is like so I don't even know how to describe it really, but it's like they're trying to make it like a VR experience. But like obviously this is a massive building, so there will be like things to see. And I don't know. That's what's exciting about this, I think, to me, is that like it's one thing to have the world's biggest, largest building, and then it's another that when you go inside, it isn't a warehouse or a factory to build Boeing airplanes. I think it's, with the trouble Boeing is going through right now, maybe it's time for them to lose the crown. I don't know, just a comment. But what this will be is an actual attraction that you can like go in and kind of see and behold for yourself, I guess. But it's really cool, I think. And
but it's not just an attraction, right? It's also offices, residences, and commercial space, and a stadium. It's kind of like it's a city.
It's a city. I don't think the stadium is in the Mukab, but
it's in the Murabba.
It's in the Murabba. It's in the square, not the cube. But yeah, I mean, it will be its own kind of city within a city. And then, Bechtel behind this whole thing, kind of master planning it. It's really interesting because they really wanted to be what I think Riyadh needs to be more of, which is walkable, bikeable, things like that. So I love seeing stuff like that. I love seeing office and retail kind of mixed in. It means you can live near to where you work. Traffic has been a consistent theme on this podcast. I think this is one that is exciting to me. It's, obviously not inexpensive for Saudi Arabia to go through this, but I think it's cool.
Yeah, and I think Riyadh in general does aspire to be more walkable and livable in multiple ways. And I think, this is going to be enclosed, so it'll be walkable all seasons, most likely as well. And again, it's really focusing on sustainability. So a lot of the energy will probably be green energy, and it's supposed to be self-sustaining on multiple levels. And I am super interested to see how it unfolds.
Me too. No shout outs this week, everybody. I need to go check to make sure I still only have 2 children. So we're going to wrap it up now, but we will be back. We have 2 interviews coming up in the next 2 episodes, which are terrific. And we look forward to airing those. And Dr. Hanaa, have a safe and fun trip and a good CSR forum in Riyadh, and my best to Aziz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And to Sophie, and good luck with the countdown.
Thank you.
Take care.
The 2030